Cloud. Lots and lots of technology, I tell ya. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Cari Jacobson. I'm going to mute Damien. Everybody mute yourself. I'll mute you guys. Okay. I think everybody's muted. All right. So welcome, everybody, to our monthly dinner with the doctors. I am Dr. Cari Jacobson. I am the founder and owner of Be Optimal Holistic Health Center, and I am here to share a little bit more about who we are and what we do at Be Optimal. And tonight's topic is on food intolerances. So first and foremost, Be Optimal Holistic Health Center is a place for people to really find and become their best self. And that looks like, it might look like a one-on-one session with one of the doctors. It might look like getting a facial and learning how to take care of your skin. It might look like a foot detox or light therapy. It might look like a class. And really, we opened in June of 2010. And my vision and goal for Be Optimal was really to create conscious community, a place for people to gather and to become their best self, however that looks. And the background that I have is in chiropractic kinesiology. And what that means is that we look at the person from the aspect of the triad of health. So if you could reference a triangle for a moment, the bottom part would be the structure. One other side would be the biochemical or nutrition side. And then the third side would be emotions and stress. And that every aspect of the triad impacts the other. So if one side is out of balance, it impacts the rest. And that has really instigated and propelled a space for holistic medicine. And that the approach that I and Dr. Abby have is going to be way more holistic than someone that's really just focused on the structural aspects of things. Because to us, everything is interrelated, everything's interconnected. And one thing can't get rebalanced without looking at another. And so it's really important to recognize, and like, we don't know what we don't know until we know it. So it's really important to recognize that there are certain things that are going to cause us to have stress. And it might be something stressful, but maybe not that happened today, but it could be something that we got triggered that maybe happened when we were 12. And in the same breath, it could be something that we ate yesterday or today. And that's really what is going to kind of lead us into the conversation today. So today I'll be focusing a little bit more on the biochemical aspect of the triad. I'm completely open to any questions that anyone may have. I'm just going to open the chat room here on the Zoom. So what folks can know is that if you register with Be Optimal at beoptimal.com, or you can call our office, then you can register for the actual Zoom call. And when you've registered for the Zoom call, you have access at the end of the talk to have one-on-one time with the doctor. And you can ask any personal questions, because usually we do these in person. So we've taken to doing it online. And it's really our joy to be able to educate people first and then treat. And so if you're someone that is itching to ask questions and really wants to learn more, then you can certainly join us more in person from a place of like the Zoom. And then there's also the space of just being able to watch it on Facebook or Instagram Live. So that's a possibility as well. If you're someone that is here to become a patient, by coming officially to our health class, then you'll receive our largest discount. And again, that's really how we like to pay it forward. We want to, because you're taking the time out of your busy life to get educated and to really learn more about what it is that we do. And so when you come in, we can get right to work. And that allows you to save a whole lot of money, which is awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about, and I will do my best to see on Instagram. I can't see Facebook questions. So if those are coming in, I can see Instagram and I can see Zoom. So if you have questions, I'll do my best to field them. And if you do have questions on Facebook, hopefully Damien or someone from the office will be looking at those, and then they can let me know. But I will do my best to answer every question you have. So I want to talk a little bit about our gut-brain connection, because there is one. And the truth is that when our gut is not healthy, the rest of our body just cannot be healthy. They actually say that Alzheimer's is like type 3 diabetes, meaning it really has to do with our blood sugar being imbalanced and our system being inflamed. And when that happens, it messes with our brain. And if you've ever felt like you had low blood sugar and just didn't really have enough food that day, or you skipped breakfast, you waited a little too long because you got busy, and you just got foggy brained, you were unable to focus and really be present, that is a sign of sort of how our blood sugar and how our gut health can kind of play into the space of the way that our brain functions, how well we're able to focus, and so on. When we're eating a whole lot of sugar, we're going to be really hyped. And we really see this in children. When children are eating a diet that's filled with breads and cookies and cakes, and they start their day with cereal, pancakes, waffles, plus maple syrup, plus maybe they have some fruit, but it's all sugar. They have a really difficult time going to school and focusing. Same with us. If we start our day with bagels and cereal and all carbs, it's really difficult to have an efficient, effective morning at work, because our energy might seem to skyrocket, but then we crash. And so we want to make sure that we're paying attention to some of the foods that we want to eat that can help to fuel our system and to help decrease inflammation and that kind of thing. And we want to make sure that the foods that are going to inflame us and fog us out are things that we choose to stay away from. So in general, we talk about, this is kind of an awful way of saying it, but the 5 pillars of death. So wheat, sugar, corn, soy, and dairy. So wheat and corn affect our liver. They make it really difficult on the liver to detoxify, which is, the liver has a lot of different jobs and duties. And so one of the things that the liver does is it helps us to detoxify. So when the liver is working overtime because the gut isn't working as well, and there's backup from our gut, and we're putting offensive things into our body, everything is working overtime, and that becomes really difficult. So just a moment. Okay. I just wanted to change the screen here because, okay. So we want to make sure that if what we're choosing to eat is going to be filled with sugar, we're not going to be able to expect that we can function very well. So what do we focus on eating then? Well, clearly we said corn and wheat or gluten are not going to be great. And what I mean by that is that I don't know if it's so much about the grain itself or if it's what it's been sprayed with. But what I do know is that it challenges our system big time, as well as processed sugar and cow's milk. Those are going to inflame us. They're mucus producing. They're going to make us feel a little bit wonky. And a lot of these are what can create a sensitivity and intolerance, or many, as you've heard, like have an allergy. So like celiac obviously has a full-blown allergy to gluten, okay, or wheat. And so how can we differentiate? How can we know how these foods are impacting us, if they're even impacting us, where to even begin? And so I'm sort of step-by-step process, because like when I tell people, don't eat those things, and that's the majority of your diet, immediately it's like, oh my God, I'm out. I got to get off this call, and I can't, there's no way I can succeed. And what I will say is that if the majority of what you eat is these processed foods, then it's going to be a step-by-step process to get you to a place where that's just not what you do anymore. And for some, they just go cold turkey. They're going, you know what? I'm going to focus on eating protein, good fats, lots of veggies. I'm going to drink lots of good quality water, and that's what I'm going to do. So that's great. But many more people, that's just not a realistic space. It's not realistic in terms of, lifestyle choices and ways in which to go about it. And baby stepping feels better. So you might say, okay, well, this week I could do without bread and wheat and gluten. So for the next 2 weeks, there's no way I'm not going to eat any of that at all. And then after that, you could decide, okay, now I'm going to take cow's milk out. And so you cut out yogurt and cheeses and cottage cheese and, things like that. And then, after that, you might go, okay, there's a lot of gluten-free items. So a lot of times when people go gluten-free, they still eat a lot of processed foods. A lot of those processed foods actually are made with corn because corn's gluten-free, but corn is highly, highly processed. And so we don't want to do that. So maybe in week 3 or 4, you decide you're going to pull out corn. So that makes it a little bit more digestible and tangible when you're doing that. So that being said, I want to just explain and express a little bit about the whole idea and the concept of what is a food allergy as it differentiates from a food intolerance, as it differentiates from a food sensitivity. So food allergy is really obvious, right? You're gonna eat something that's offensive to the body. You have an allergy, instantaneously or within the hour, you're breaking out in hives. You might, if it's anaphylaxis, it could close up a throat, it creates inflammation, and it's really obvious. You notice it right away, okay? A food intolerance is going to be something like you eat it, you don't necessarily have something right away. So for example, I'll just give an example for me. If I eat cheese or like a bunch of dairy, I don't necessarily notice that I feel bad right away. I'm like, I'm good, I'm fine. And then it isn't until the next morning that my sinuses are totally congested. I have extreme postnasal drip. I might even be a little bit bloaty and gassy, but it's not that obvious. It's just because I know my body. I've taken out some of those offensive foods so that I can differentiate what foods really exacerbate an intolerance or a sensitivity, which I'm going to define for you in a moment. So it isn't always obvious. And if every day you're eating offensive foods to your body that create inflammation in your body, and I'm going to talk about how that happens, then you don't really know if the food you ate last night or 2 days ago or this morning is impacting you right now in terms of your function and your health. And so it can be very frustrating because people have all kinds of symptoms. And most often you can point it towards gut health and towards the fuel that we put into our body, because the fuel we put into our body impacts how we function. We just can't get around that. That is the foundation of our physical well-being, period. Now, it's not to say that if we don't experience stress, or if we, something like that, if we experience stress, and that might impact like us desiring or having a physiological desire to, go out and buy a pint of ice cream and eat the whole thing and not want to care, right? Stress induced that, but you still put in that, I don't even want to call it nutrition, but that choice of food into your system. And then that triggers a reaction. So if that's the case, then there's no way for you to know what's working and what isn't without taking out some of the things that are really inflammatory in nature. Does that make sense? So food sensitivities, as opposed to an intolerance, are even more or even less discerning, I guess, is a great way of saying it, and more obsolete. It's like, it doesn't seem to make sense. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. So it's that space of, it's the cumulative of eating. So maybe you're totally fine with gluten and wheat, and it's something that you have had every single day at pretty much every meal, and you've done it for years. And now all of a sudden you're having a lot of bloating and your body just doesn't feel right or whatever. So is it the wheat? Yes, it could very well be. One, because again, like I was saying, it's sprayed with an outrageous amount of chemicals. So the cumulative of that's like our body hasn't been able to progress as fast as science. So our body just can't get rid of it as fast as it's coming in. So as that's happening, there's a buildup of toxicity, too much toxicity in, not enough going out, and we're not feeling good. So that can be the reason for the sensitivity, is more of the chemicals as opposed to the grain itself. But either way, it becomes an offensive food. Does that make sense? So it's like, you're eating it. It could take a month or two of eating it. It could be weeks and weeks. It could be years of eating these foods that all of a sudden, it's never really all of a sudden. And the reason why is that if your capacity to handle stress is like this, and your stress level is here, you feel fine. Everything's great. You're fine, right? And even when your stress level is right here, it's right at the brink, you still feel fine. Why do I need to get help? I'm good. I feel great. And then there's one little thing. It's like someone blew wrong, like blew by you. They cut you off on the highway, or all you did was eat what you normally eat, which is, a microwavable pancake for breakfast and an egg and some fruit and yogurt. But perhaps it was just that little bit more of dairy and that little bit more of the processed pancake or whatever that just took you over. Even though you've been doing it, it's been adding that stress level up to the point where you're now overflowing. When you're overflowing, that's when symptoms happen. So it's so important for us to recognize that there's a lot of stuff we cannot control with regards to the stressors that are out there, but there's so much that we can control. And a big part of that is the nourishment and the nutrients that we choose to put into our body. So I want to focus in on how that systemic inflammation happens in our body. Our digestive health is huge. And I really wanted to show you, I didn't know if it would transfer well on Zoom and on these recordings, but I'm just going to explain what it is that we like to do in our office, which is this. First, let me just preface. When we're digesting our food, and let's just say we have been used to eating some of these offensive foods that I talked about over and over again for a really long time. And then we start to age and we think that we're not able to handle those foods because we're getting older. I would say just that you're sitting with things for longer. And what I mean by that is that the enzymes just aren't, when we eat an offensive food, like if we eat a raw apple or lettuce, there are enzymes within raw food that actually help break down the food itself. Plus, your body will borrow some enzymes from the way the mechanisms work in the body so that you have enzymes to break down the food you're eating. If it's a food like dairy and wheat or breads or pies or pizzas or whatever, you have to borrow from your body way more enzymes to break that stuff down than not. And so after doing that for so long, the system of your body you don't have enough enzymes to utilize to break down the meal as efficiently and as effectively as what's needed. And so what happens then is that you have to supplement with enzymes. And this is the example that I like to share. Someone's just sharing that they have allergies and sensitivities to pretty much anything. So yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is giving your body gut support, which is why I'm sort of jumping around a little bit, not only with the food that we eat, but we have to be ultra careful about the food that we eat and take out the most offensive foods. And like I said, it's wheat, sugar, corn, soy, and dairy, cow's milk, but also for many, it can be grains as well as legumes. So those can be really inflammatory as well for the system. And if you go on something like the Whole30 really breaks it down, and it's really just about eating whole food nutrition. When you're eating whole food nutrition, everything functions better. But I would still argue that if you are having any kind of digestive issues, or you're in your early 30s or older, you really want to, yeah, Dr. Abby, you really want to make sure that you start taking enzymes and that you're making sure to take care of your digestive health. So Dr. Abby just said nightshades, which nightshade vegetables will create an inflammatory response because of something that's in them called solanine. And you can experience something called solanine toxicity, which is found in eggplant, peppers, tomatoes, and potatoes. I believe I haven't, and tobacco, but I don't think any of us are eating that really. So we want to be really mindful about those foods because especially when we're already in an inflamed state, eating a bunch of peppers thinking we're being like really awesome and having tomato sauce on our zoodles might not be our best choice because those are nightshade vegetables and they also can create inflammation. So sticking with green leafies is going to be awesome. Carrots, celery, zucchini, awesome. Cabbage, broccoli, you know, things like that would be great. But again, a lot of people go, there's no way I can eat that. I will be so gassy. It will be awful. And what I would say to that is then you need digestive enzymes to help you break it down. So imagine that I have 2 pudding cups. You know, those really disgusting, really thick gas station pudding cups that's like chocolate pudding. Okay, are you everybody with me? Imagine that I have those and I'm going to hand you one with a spoon and you're just going to stir it. Okay. Then I have digestive enzymes with me and I'm just going to do the serving. I'm just going to take 2 digestive enzymes. I'm going to drop it into the pudding and I too am going to stir. And I want to just share with you that what happens in your body is when you're eating food, your body starts to break it down until the food is broken down enough, it won't move on into the small intestine. What happens is when it churns too long, because it hasn't broken down enough to be able to move on, now we start experiencing a reflux kind of experience, or we get bloaty. That's when we get more bloaty and gassy, and we just feel kind of like, after that meal, it was just so hard to break down. And what happens is that some of the food particles can actually start to get into our system because some of them are trying to move on because they're ready to go, but some of them aren't. When whole food particles begin to get into our system, it creates an antibody response. And the antibody response is what can create that histamine reaction for the allergy, the intolerance, or sensitivity. And it's what creates a systemic inflammation. It's what makes our body inflamed. When we have inflammation, everything hurts in our body. It makes a great house for pathology. It sucks, actually. It's literally what creates the foundation for us to be sick. So it starts in the gut. So now we've been stirring our pudding, and I would tell you, turn that pudding cup over. And what you'll find is the spoon is basically stuck inside the cup, and that pudding ain't going anywhere. That pudding cup, the pudding is thicker than thick, and it's still in that cup. And for me, I pour mine, and actually within 30 seconds, it becomes liquid. And all of that pudding could just pour out like it's water. So it's a great visual and a great explanation for you to understand the significance of what digestive enzymes can do for our body so that we can efficiently and effectively break our food down so we don't have too much churning. It prevents us from having reflux. It prevents us from, getting bloaty and gassy and being like ultra, burpy, farty after a meal or even the next day. And it just gets everything moving along. So aside from really eating foods that can support and minimize the inflammation in our system, we're also looking to take care of the entirety of our digestive system. And what I mean by that is that we have an epithelial lining, or like a skin, if you will, of the digestive tract and system. On top of that is a mucosal layer. But a lot of times when we've experienced like just health issues and difficulty with anything like that, we our mucosal lining kind of breaks down. And even when we put good stuff in, it can still create reactivity, which we don't want. We don't want that to happen, right? And so how do you rebuild that mucosal lining? Well, there's two products that I know of. One is called, and really this one would be the best, but it's not always the best first place to start, but it's called Mega Mucosa. And Mega Mucosa has 3 ingredients in it, including immunoglobulins. Immunoglobulins actually help to take inflammation down in your body and in your gut, and it calms everything. So it's something that you would take if you just took the immunoglobulins or the IG, IgM, whatever. You would take those right after a meal. And people that really struggle with things like eczema or skin stuff all over, they're going to really benefit from a healthier gut and taking down that inflammation. So Mega Mucosa, you're going to start your day with it. You're going to drink it, and it's going to start to lay down that mucosal lining again. And that IgG after every meal, you're going to do, 2 to 3 times a day to really start taking down that inflammation and to help almost eat away that inflammation. Now, digestive enzymes can do that too. A lot of people will take, if they have a major pathology or something really like they're pretty sick. I've known and have been told by other colleagues that eating an enzyme, a digestive enzyme, like one every hour, waking and non-waking hour, can actually start to break down and get rid of a lot of the inflammation that's happening in our system. But as we're attempting to get rid of the inflammation, if our diet still consists of food that create inflammation, we're defeating the purpose. Now, it doesn't mean never, ever will you ever be able to enjoy. For some people, they just go, you know what? I can't. If I eat one bit of it, I'm down the rabbit hole. I can't eat that stuff. Other people go, I can find balance. I want the 80-20 rule. And what I would say is you'll get there. It's just that if you're so out of balance over here, we have to swing the pendulum to the other side in order to refine your balance, in order for you to know what your 80-20 is. Does that make sense? So that leaves us with, so we've got digestive enzymes, Mega Mucosa, IgG. There's 2 more things that I want to just touch on. One is called Mega Prebiotic. That's the one I prefer, but a lot of people have probably heard of prebiotics anyway. So, excuse me. So a prebiotic, or this particular one, the Mega Prebiotic, is a precision prebiotic, which means that it finds the space and place within the intestinal lining to create a space for the good stuff to grow. So a lot of us are riddled with bad bacteria, excessive amounts of yeast. I mean, it's normal to have a little bit, and our body has an immune system in a way to sort of offset it and to find and rebalance it. But if we don't put the good stuff in, or for example, we didn't experience a vaginal delivery, because actually when we go through the vaginal canal as a baby, that actually is the beginning creation of a lot of our microbiome. We're exposed to a lot of different good bacteria. So is breastfeeding, but not everybody's breastfed. So then we're starting out with a microbiome that's never really developed or had a chance to develop in the most optimal way. Now, our grandparents got to have picnics, and there were spores and bacterias on their apples that they ate, and there wasn't all the antibacterial stuff, and there wasn't any of that. So they also had a better fighting chance to create a healthier microbiome. We have to give it to our body. We need to take probiotics. We need to take sporebiotics, because our system is not really getting it, especially if we haven't started out with a full spectrum microbiome the way that perhaps once upon a time we could have. There's no shame or blame. It just is what it is. But all I'm telling you is that if you don't have it, then we need to give you something in order to help your body help itself. So that's where I come in with Megaspore Biotic. And Megaspore Biotic is the first of its kind in that it's the first multi-spore. They've been using spore biotics in Europe for decades. Megaspore Biotic isn't just like mowing the weeds, meaning like mowing away like the bad stuff. It's literally weeding. So it doesn't wait for yeast to die off. It kicks the yeast out. It doesn't wait for bacteria to sort of die. It actually creates upwards of 36 antibiotics, surrounds the bad bacteria, kills it, and then pulls it out. So it's proactive for your health, and it begins refurbishing in your small intestine all the way through the large intestine. And what's cool about that is that 99 to 100% of spore actually gets through the stomach lining, because the stomach is so acidic that a lot of times when people take probiotic and they spend 50 or 60 bucks on a bottle that has to be refrigerated, listen, if you've got to buy a probiotic that has to be refrigerated, I can guarantee you it's unstable, because if it needs to be refrigerated in order to stay stable, once it goes in your body, it's not so stable. So it can't really get through the stomach lining and really help support your body. And they've shown a lot of research specifically about probiotics that it helps kind of shift the pH, but it doesn't necessarily help refurbish the microbiome. And that's what spores really do. It's really important that we get on those. The prebiotic sets it up for all that good stuff to flourish. We love that. The mega mucosal or the IgG, that's going to help decrease inflammation and really get that mucosal lining back up and running, so that even when you put the good stuff in, like a megaspore or like a probiotic, hopefully if you get a probiotic, it has a cell wall around it, because then you have a fighting chance to get about 3 to 5% of what's promised. But otherwise, you really just don't get that much. But the bottom line is, if you don't have the ability to, I forgot what I was saying. Basically, the spore refurbishes your entire being, and we definitely want that. We want it to get through the stomach lining. We want it to refurbish the whole thing. When you can rebuild your digestive system like this, then you have the opportunity to begin to thrive. Then you're taking down the inflammation. You've shifted your diet. You're supporting your digestive system, especially when you are going to eat an offensive food. Okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to have a couple slices of Chicago style pizza. I've got someone visiting or whatever, and I normally wouldn't, but I'm going to splurge. I can just tell you right now, if I decide to eat one slice of thick crust Chicago style pizza, I will be taking 3 to 4 enzymes while I'm eating it, and probably 3 to 4 enzymes when I finish just that one slice, because I'm not going to leave it to chance to let my body try to figure out how to break that thing down. I know for a fact I will not feel good the next day if I haven't taken the enzymes. I still might not feel awesome, but at least I've helped my body break it down efficiently and effectively and move on. Make sense? So, food sensitivities, food intolerance, food allergies. The bottom line is that histamine response is going to be there whether it looks like a 1 + 1 = 2 or not, because it might be like a 1 + 1 plus one more time, plus one more time, over and over and over again. Your system becomes less and less efficient. And now things just are haywire and you've got so many symptoms. I remember what I was saying. What I wanted to say is that if the mucosal lining is not there and that epithelial or that like skin lining of your stomach is exposed, even when you put good stuff into your body, it creates a reaction because the body doesn't know, it can't recognize. That's why the mucosal lining needs to be there, so that it can protect and create also less inflammation. So even when you were to put the megaspore biotic or a probiotic into your system, it can still react if the mucosal lining has been down to nothing. And we don't want that. we want to prevent any chance for more inflammation in the system as we're getting rid of the inflammation and as we're helping our system function optimally. So I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. What I can tell you is that the Be Optimal store, we actually have a store in-house, and we've done all the research for you. So for us, it's really important that we know where it's manufactured, how they ship it to us, and that we can stand by the product, that if there's ever anything wrong with it, like we can make sure that it's handled. And so what I can tell you is that we've got really amazing enzymes. It's not to say we're the only place that has that, but a lot of people will go to Costco to get fish oil because fish oil is anti-inflammatory, but it's totally rancid because it may have been bottled or encapsulated rancid, or they might have shipped it and it's at a 90-degree weather on a tarmac that, created rancidity in those fish oil pills by the time it gets into your body. So we want to make sure that we're really aware of what it is that we're putting into our body, even from the standpoint of supplementation. Someone's asking, can you speak to muscle testing techniques that may help with the histamine response and to identify sensitivities? So, muscle testing techniques, like what, Dr. Abby? So anyways, just clarify for me, Dr. Abby, and then because I want to make sure that I'm directing it the way that you're thinking. But I will say that in the office, we use muscle testing, and in person, we would probably bring up a couple of volunteers and we would be able to demonstrate and show that if you do just a straight arm reflex muscle test or an actual legitimate, like we could take the pec major clavicular and, be able to muscle test where you're strong. So if you have a strong muscle and we put up to the body, okay, I was going that direction. So we put up to the body, let's say the actual food itself, let's just say we put up, a piece of corn or a piece of bread, we can actually see if your body is incongruent with it, the muscle goes weak. And a lot of people go, that's just a bunch of bull. And the truth is it's not. There's an art to muscle testing, and some people do push harder and then it is a bunch of bull. But when you have the art of the muscle testing, you can literally feel it give way, and you can feel it give way, and you can feel the give. And the person can feel it as well, and is always amazed by what it is that they feel. What you're creating is a circuit. So it's helping you to feel and see what is in agreement with your body, what is congruent, what keeps your body strong, or what actually can influence the body to create a weakness or can sort of break the circuit. So if it's an offensive food, what's cool about muscle testing is it can pick up when something is just 2% progressed, meaning more of like a sensitivity, where you're not going to necessarily, it's not going to be so cut and dry when you eat it. But if we hold it up to your body and it makes your whole body weak, probably not the best food to be eating for your body. So there are ways in something called total body modification, and NAET, which is an allergy elimination technique, that actually have vials of offensive foods. It could be, or like dog hair, cat skin, molds, tree bark, tree sap, grasses, all it breaks it down on like every level, yeast, fungus, whatever. So you can actually put the energetic aspect of what that particular thing is, the wheat, the dairy, the peppers, the bell peppers, the whatever. And you can put it up into the body and just see, what the impact is on that particular person. You may stay strong with it. It may not be the offensive food for you, but it might be rice. And you have rice for every meal because it's gluten-free and you think you were doing so great, but the rice was really impacting you. And actually, I had a patient who was so clean. She was off those 5 foods and she's like, I don't know. And I was like, you know what? We have to do a little bit of testing. So we looked a little further. And for her, it was yeast, baker's yeast, and I don't know if it was nutritional yeast, but I think it was nutritional yeast, baker's yeast, and rice. Those were her 3 offenders. And she's literally was in reflecting, was like, I have that for almost every meal. It was in the different sauces that she used. It was part of the, like, raw cheese would have nutritional yeast in it. And she would go for sushi and have rice because she could, and, you know, that kind of thing. And she was this tall, skinny woman who looked like she had a little pregnant belly. And she was like, I can't get rid of this. It's like, I've got this pregnant belly. It's making me crazy. And that's why we started to delve in. And sure enough, it was something she was eating every day at almost every meal. And it wasn't those 5 things. She'd already taken those out, but we were able to figure it out so fast because she was so clean. We were able to really figure out what it was that works for her and didn't work for her. The minute she took out the yeast and the rice, her belly was down within 1 to 2 weeks time. And that's been it. Now she's able to eat it again, but she just does it way less. She just doesn't have it for every meal. She doesn't necessarily have it every day. But when she goes out for sushi, she likes to enjoy some rice. But now that happens, you know, once a week instead of like every day. And so she just makes different choices and is empowered to be able to do that because she has a more awareness of her body. So there's just so much that we can do to support you in all different kinds of health ailments when we can understand better what works as fuel for your body and what doesn't, when we can support the stress eating and the emotions that kind of push us into wanting to eat some of those offensive foods and things like that. And then we can help you to stay connected. And that's from that foundational structural standpoint. As chiropractors, we would adjust you, and we would be really specific about how we adjust you, because our nervous system connects our brain with our body and our body back into our brain. So if things are disconnected and not communicating with ease and grace, then there's no way we can function optimally. Then there's no way that our digestive system can even integrate the supplements that we're giving to it and that kind of thing. So it's really important that we get the help that it is that we need, because we don't know what we don't know until we know it. And then once we do, we're empowered with tools and strategies and support to really help our body and our whole life become more optimal. And that's really what we're about at Be Optimal. Myself and Dr. Abby are the chiropractic kinesiologists, and we're here to support you. We're here to help you. We're here to answer questions. It's our passion and our desire to be able to educate you and give you tools, but also to guide you very specifically, individually. There's no cookie cutter approach. So individually, to see what it is that your body needs, what it is that's going to help you to be the best you possible, and to really help you navigate your health journey. And so that's what we do. That's what you'll find in our appointments. And I'm going to open it up to questions. But before I do, I will stop the recording, and then I'll be here to answer questions for those of you on Zoom. Thanks so much for attending, everybody, and thanks for being here. I know your time is precious, and we're really blessed and grateful to have you present. So be well, everyone. Okay.